Joining me right now, we have Democratic Congresswoman from Pennsylvania, Madeleine Dean. She's a member of the House Appropriations and Foreign Affairs Committees and is spending part of her birthday with us here on this Saturday. So thank you specially for doing that. That said, we know you said yesterday in response to allegations against Plattner that he has disqualified himself. Rep. Khanna says he believes he has redeemed himself. Can Plattner convince voters or you by Tuesday that he has done that?
Alex, so good to be with you, especially on my birthday. So thank you for inviting me. I have to tell you, Mr. Plattner lost me when I learned of the tattoo of a Jewish swastika anti-Semitic symbol. I have the good fortune of representing suburban Philadelphia with terrific American Jewish constituents who over the years, through their friendship, have taught me so much about anti-Semitism and to be keenly, keenly aware of its ruin and its roots. And so he lost me there. But you layer in the sexting, the toxic relationships. Come on, folks. He has disqualified himself. Let's just be honest about that which we believe in our values. I want the man to go on to a healthy life and redeem himself, but not in the U.S. Senate.
But we're talking politics, which begs this question. Is opposing him worth risking that Senate seat if he can take it and turn it blue?
I'm not that much of a calculator. I care about electing people who actually reveal integrity, ethics, honesty, just basic truth and honesty. After all, I think, and again, I'm not a Mainer, I'm not making these calls, but I think Governor Mills is still on the ballot. I'd rather have a senior governor to a man who is so very much ethically challenged.
All right, let's talk about what happened this week with the Senate having passed that $70 billion immigration enforcement bill after multiple efforts to block Trump's $1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund failed. Republicans made it sound like the fund was a breaking point for them, but they ultimately let it pass, trusting Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's word that it would not be moving forward. Why did Republican lawmakers change their tune so quickly?
I have no idea. It is something I will long try to figure out. But you know, Blanche was in front of us, the Appropriations Committee subcommittee this week. And he was asked about the weaponization fund and said he didn't use the word that it's dead. It's just they're not pursuing it, some kind of a word like that. And when Ranking Member Grace Meng said, well, will you put that in writing? He acted as though that was a strange request. It's the Acting Attorney General who put both that and the IRS amnesty settlement agreement in writing for this president. By leaving it not in writing, by saying, look, I've said it in front of you, members of Congress, that ought to be good enough. You saw the door that it left open for his principal, for his primary client, President Trump, who said he really likes the fund. He doesn't want it to go away. So Republicans, some of them have stepped away from this. I wish they could have come up with something much, much stronger to fully block it. We know there are other avenues that these criminals will be rewarded. After all, let's think about this. This is really, it was set up to offer a payout to those who were pardoned, 1,500 American, sadly, criminals, many of whom were tried and convicted of attacking the Capitol, of beating police officers, using Trump flags and American flags. Alex, you know I was there. Some of your colleagues were there with me. It is disgusting that they were pardoned and dismaying that an acting attorney general reveals that he's only interested in satisfying the president's wishes of paying these people back for having such loyalty to him and attacking the United States Capitol and an election.
With taxpayer money, by the way,
Correct.
As if that is an addendum. All right, so then we have Donald Trump and his family and businesses expected to keep his tax immunity, which Todd Blanche tacked on very quietly, just a one-page addendum to this $1.8 billion so-called settlement. Assuming the courts don't block it, why are lawmakers letting this slide?
Oh, we're not going to let it slide. He was asked about that also in our hearing this week. And I call upon your viewers. I'm sure they'll be interested. Pull it up on your computers. See the simplicity of the language. And my question is this. Why would the president ask for such a thing? Why would he ask for amnesty on behalf of himself, on behalf of his family members, on behalf of his businesses? Who asks for such a thing? Who needs such a thing? He doesn't want to be have any obligation for paying his taxes or being audited for failure to pay his taxes. You've seen in Forbes and other peer-reviewed, I would say, economic outlets that this could be anywhere from 100 million to 600 million in tax amnesty for this president. But I really say to anybody out there, why would your president want to hide his tax payments, his tax returns? Why wouldn't he say, I'm a proud American, I pay my taxes in full, and let me show you? He's hiding that he's stealing from the American taxpayer.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who of course has been nominated to that role permanently, was asked about alleged plans for Democrats to prosecute Trump administration officials if they win in 2029. Here's his response.
Well, do I believe it's a possibility that the Democrats will go after President Trump, his family, anybody that knows him, anybody that worked for him? I think they've proven that to be true. And what can we do about it is we can just keep on exposing. When we learn about the weaponization that happened for many years, we can keep on exposing it and putting roadblocks in place so it never happens again.
What do you make of his comments, and what roadblocks against retribution can he put in place?
Well, it's extraordinarily troubling that this acting attorney general seeks to be confirmed as attorney general. He's supposed to be the top law enforcement officer for the United States. I asked him about this. Was his loyalty, for example, in the Epstein case, was his loyalty to seek justice for the victims, or is his number one loyalty to the president of the United States? Why is he talking so much about weaponization and retribution? And why, when we are desperately seeking justice for the victims of Epstein and the other perpetrators, is he covering it all up and instead focusing on retribution against those perceived to be enemies of the president? Did you find it as jarring as I did that they have opened an investigation into E. Jean Carroll? Are you kidding me? How about prosecute some of the perpetrators of the grotesque more than 1,000 victims of Epstein? And he told us very clearly, both in a personal conversation I had with him and then again this week, he has no interest in prosecuting. He only wants to serve this president who paid him $10 million to be his defense lawyer, not a very successful one, and for whom he said, if he should be dismissed, I will just tell the president, I love you, sir.
Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, our birthday girl. Enjoy today. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that.